Good morning, Austin residents. Welcome to our town hall meeting this morning. As you all know, this is a panel discussing both sides on the ethics of gun control. I'm going to introduce my panelists this morning. We have Marina Sarazin. She is the director of the board at Austin High School. Next to Marina, we have Bobby Scott. He's an NRA, National Rifle Association member. And finally, we have David Gutierrez, who is a member of the Coalition to Stop Gun Violence. We did have a panel member leave us this morning, Amar. However, hopefully we can get all the questions answered. As I said, the purpose of this panel is to present both sides of gun control. And just to set a few ground rules, each panelist will have 50 seconds to answer each question. And we're going to hold all audience questions until the Q&A at the end of the panel. So to jump into these first questions, the first question is, what is your position on gun control and why? So Marina, if you could answer that.
As Eli said, my name is Marina Sarazin. I am for gun control. For me, guns just bring violence, and 66% of police chief officers think that concealed gun reduce violent rate crimes. Also, there are no explicit laws about carrying a firearm in the United States, and there is a real need of rules for a safer country. The Federal Gun-Free School Zone Act makes exception, but for me it shouldn't, and our government is too lax about it. For these two reasons, I am for gun control in the United States.
Thank you, Marina. Next, Bobby, same question. The question, just to repeat it, was what is your position on gun control and why?
Thank you, Eli. Like Eli stated, I'm Bobby Scott, and I'm an NRA member and advocate. I am against gun control for a few different reasons. First, I'm just going to start off with the Second Amendment. It's our right to bear arms. Now, some argue that your right to bear arms had to do in the 1700s when we were worried about a tyrannical government. But nowadays, it's just as important because it's one of our rights. And once the government starts taking away some of your rights, they start taking away all of your rights. Second, I'm going to argue that gun control in America won't work at this point. Now, according to the clause.org, in Australia, they took away guns and bought them back to restrict guns and take guns out of Australia, but that won't work in America. With over 300 million guns being owned currently by Americans, there's no possible way for the government to buy back guns.
Thank you, Bobby. Finally, David, the same question. What is your position on gun control and why?
Hello everybody, my name is David Gutierrez and I am for gun control. A lot of my reasons are similar to the ones that Marina stated earlier. I believe that the laws surrounding gun control are too lax, and even when legislation is in place to protect people from guns, a lot of it is not enforced adequately. And I think a lot of the problems in debate stem directly from the Second Amendment being an outdated amendment that no longer reflects the writer's intent or the best interests of our nation. However, I do also believe that a lot of the gun violence stems directly from gangs and poverty-related motives, which make up a huge percentage of gun-related violence. So I think a lot of the most efficient gun control would be cracking down on poverty and the gangs themselves.
Good points. Thank you, David. Our next question is, should we establish gun education courses in school and why? So, Marina?
I am for education in school, gun education in school. For me, we need to educate the children and let them be aware that guns represent a danger. I can bring the example. I read in the ABC News of a 6-year-old boy. He bring the firearm of his father and killed a classmate because he didn't know what was representing this firearm. So for me, it should be mandatory. Also, according to the ABC, children are educated about bicycle safety, drug, alcohol, or sex education, so that they can bring this foundation everywhere with them. I think it should be the same with guns. However, I think it's not enough, and we need to accompany this school education about guns with changing gun laws. So I am for gun education in the school, but I think it's not enough.
Thank you. Bobby, the same question. Should we establish gun control education courses in school?
I believe that education on guns is very important. As an NRA member, I'm supposed to be knowledgeable of guns and the consequences of guns. With any object you can use where there's danger of possible death, like driving a car or even using a power tool, it's important to understand the possibilities and the consequences of using such object. So I believe educating the youth about gun use can help the future generations on understanding what happens when you use a gun and the consequences of using such gun, and therefore will take out a lot of the possibilities of bad actions with those guns.
All right, sounds good. David, the same question. Should we establish gun control education classes?
As Bobby said before, guns are here to stay. Any sort of legislation trying to take guns from private owners would be political suicide. So since they are here to stay, I believe that yes, children should be educated on guns, how they work, how to react in a lot of gun-related scenarios, like where they're being attacked. I think that would be very, very vital information for people to know, especially our youth. Since many schools in Texas even have started allowing legislation to allow guns on school, I believe that guns education courses will not be enough. In Israel, there are armed guards that protect kids outside of schools, and I think that that's a little extreme. But here in America, in order to stop violence in schools themselves, we could have police patrol schools during school hours, or related safety measures.
All right. So finally, the last question. Do you believe guns are too easy to obtain in America?
Well, I agree that guns are too easy to find in America. The problem is guns fell in the hands of people with dangerous mental diseases, felons, or people with bad intentions. The examples could be James Holmes or Adam Lanza, which are allegedly authors of shooting in a cinema and a school. According to a CNN journalist, and I agree with that, we cannot change the torture psychology of men like these two men, but we can change our gun laws in America. My second argument would be the example of Aaron Lennox's. He was involved in two previous incidents that involved guns, but he passed the state and federal checks. So for me, it showed that the government is too lax about it, and also about the illegal traffic of gun arms, and that's uncontrolled. That's why I think guns are too easy to obtain in America, and that's why I am for gun control.
Thank you. Bobby, the same question. Do you believe guns are too easy to obtain in America?
I'm going to start off by saying legally, I do not believe they are. There's rules on what you have to require and able to buy a gun. You have to be of age, and to have a concealed handgun license, you have to take classes. That being said, illegally, yes, guns are too easy to obtain in America. But that's not something that you can do anything about by taking away the rights of people that want to get guns legally. By taking away the rights of someone that wants to buy a gun, use it for hunting or something like that, you're taking away their inalienable right to own a gun and therefore protect themselves against people who get guns illegally regardless. So why would you take the gun out of the hands of people that are using them for the right reasons, when the people that are going to get them illegally are going to have them regardless? And for that reason, I am against gun control.
All right. Thank you, Bobby. And David, same final question. Do you believe guns are too easy to obtain in America?
For various reasons, yes, I do believe that guns are too easy to obtain in America. Not necessarily because the legislation is not in place to protect people from guns, but oftentimes, like I said earlier, the legislation is simply not enforced with adequate force. A lot of times background checks fail to bring up data that should be in the database, which is a crucial fault by the government. Definitely need to enforce stricter measures to make sure that databases are always up to date, so that schizophrenics and people with mental illness can't commit crimes of passion even. I do believe that there should always be a wait time, and before when you want to buy a gun, of at least maybe 72 hours in order to prevent those kinds of crimes of passion. You shouldn't be able to go and buy a gun immediately by any means. So yes, for a variety of reasons, I do think that guns are too easy to obtain here in America.
Thank you, David. So just to recap each one of my panelists this morning, Marina is for gun control. She brought up about how people having guns, having firearms in the wrong hands, also the need for stricter laws. Bobby talked about how he was against gun control, showing its inability to work, and remembering our Second Amendment right to bear arms. And finally, David talked about how he was for gun control, and he also used the Second Amendment, but he explained how it was outdated and maybe even needs another amendment to replace it. So thank you, panelists, this morning. Thank you, audience members, and we'll open up the floor to some Q&A. Sir?
My question's for Marina. I read somewhere there's a shooting range in a high school in Atlanta, and I was wondering, since you're for education of guns in schools, are you still for the shooting range in high school?
All right, so the question is, it's regarding the shooting range in the high school in North Carolina.
Well, no, I don't think it's a good idea. I read on the Huffington Post that parents of this high school think it will learn their children to use a firearm in a proper way and in a responsible way. Well, I think it's just dangerous, and it means that there will be more firearms in high school. I think you cannot fight gun violence with more guns, and I am for gun education in theory, but not in practice. They say it will be supervised and safe, but the thing is with guns, you never know. It can become out of control, and I think in the end of young people, it's an even bigger problem.
All right, thank you. Any more questions, sir?
It's a question for David. And can you explain why the Second Amendment is outdated in more depth?
All right, David, the question was why the Second Amendment is outdated.
In order to better understand why the Second Amendment is outdated, you have to look back and think about the state of America at the time of its writing and why the writers wrote it that way. If you look back in America in 1776, you see that there was no regulated army, there was no government-regulated army. Any and all defense for the United States came from the citizens themselves and their weapons. So if you look at the wording of the Second Amendment, it clearly states, a well-regulated militia, necessary for the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. It clearly states a well-regulated militia for the security of a free state. The intent here was to classify all citizens as the militia in order to protect all their rights to bear arms, in order to defend themselves from attacks like the war that happened against Great Britain, obviously, the Revolutionary War. If you think about it in today's terms, we no longer have a need for a well-regulated militia because we have an outstanding army, the #1 army in the entire world. So, and you also have to keep in mind that the Founding Fathers in no way could have predicted the innovations in technology and weapon revolutions that have come since then, like AR-15s. There's no way they could have kept that in mind. So, yes, the Second Amendment, in my opinion, is outdated and should be updated with a Second Amendment that perhaps modifies the Second or restates, rewords what the Second Amendment has said.
Hope that answered your question. We have time for one more. Sir?
This question is for Bobby. As a member of the RNA, what is the most important thing to remember about guns?
All right, so I think, what's the most important thing to remember about guns, being an NRA member?
Like I said before, the most important thing to remember is that they are a dangerous utensil, and they should be used for the right reasons, whether it's hunting or just going to the shooting range and seeing your accuracy or going to gun shows. They are a dangerous thing, and you need to make sure that you're careful with use or being around them at any point.
Well, that wraps up our panel this morning. Thank you for coming.